Hello, and welcome to episode number 22. The title, my name is Torsten Dobble. The title of this week's episode is called What to Do When You Wake Up and It Seems Like I got hit by a truck. So, have you ever experienced that? And it's often when it happens once in a while, and that was what happened this morning with me. So yeah, it was really interesting. I woke up and it seemed like I got hit by a truck, and so it was interesting because it took me a little bit, but I did finally get to some questions. And so one of the questions was, what is this? What do I do with it? Can I change it? If so, how can I change it? And it was interesting when I was asking the different questions what showed up. And also it was interesting, I was asking, who does this belong to? And I got it wasn't mine, so I was returning it to sender. And as that happened, just more space kind of showed up. And then I started playing with a few other questions, and one of the other, questions, I guess, or tools, I guess, would be the thing. One of them was interesting point of view. I have this point of view. Now, I haven't played with this that much of late, and I started playing with it, and it was interesting just. And I've been playing with it much more in the last few days, mainly about my points of views. Interesting point of view. I have this point of view is what has shown up. And so it's so neat to see what kind of space comes out of that. And also not to go into the wrongness of you, or in this case of myself, because I do still see that I do that sometimes. And so it was really interesting to be aware of that, be aware of the interesting points of views that I have around different things. And in this morning case was that it seemed like I got hit by a truck. That was my interesting point of view. And it's really neat to see how these things show up, and that then you get to play with the tools and change them and ask questions. Also, the other one that when I seem to not get tons of clarity, I ask, what am I perceiving? And that always creates something different. And I realize as I'm staring at the camera, I'm squinting like crazy, so my eyes probably look like they're shut. I tend to have this thing with light in me. I should just wear sunglasses all the time. I think I'm going to just wear sunglasses all the time. Especially when it's sunny. It seems to make a difference. And I'm on the swinging chair, and if I swing too much, I hit the tripod. Okay. So that was kind of what showed up this morning. And what's kind of cool is I'm going to go on a total tangent here, and I'm going to go somewhere completely different, which I probably knew I would, and it probably has nothing to do with the title at all, and that's just the way things are showing up. The other thing that was really, really cool that showed up for me this week was I was reading a book. It's called Would You Teach a Fish to Climb a Tree? I believe is the title of it. And it's written by Anne Maxwell in conjunction with Gary and Dane. And it's really cool because it talks about kids that have been labeled to some degree, like ADHD or autism or whatever it is, OCD, things like that. And just how much we in in this world how much it's seen as a problem. It's seen as a disability, when I really get, as I become more aware and I really look at what actually is, it's just a different way of functioning. And one of the reasons why it's kind of popping for me right now is that as a kid, I was also diagnosed with a label. And the label that I was given was dyslexia. And it was interesting because I just watched a movie about it last night, about this kid that, and in my diagnosis of me having dyslexia, it wasn't something that was actually severe in a sense. Like, it wasn't a severe case, as whatever that means. I don't really know. But anyways, it didn't affect me to too much of a degree. I mean, my spelling was horrendous, and thank goodness for spell check these days, because that really helps a lot. But it was interesting just to see. So in reading this book, it just talks about communication, and not communicating in words and communicating telepathically, and how much these kids with these labels, and probably actually almost all kids, I would have to say, pretty much do function on a telepathic level. Specifically, kids that have been labeled or seem to be not normal on some level, which is normal these days. So what was interesting was that, so I was reading about this, and one of the things that it talks about is to then actually play with communicating with your children telepathically. And one of the examples that was given is when you just can't get your kids to do what you want them to do. One example was talking about getting them ready for school in the morning. Now, I have two wonderful nieces, and I've visited them a number of times, and they seem to barely be able to catch the bus in the morning when the bus comes. It's a total sort of mad scramble in the last few seconds as the bus shows up to like run out the door. So I was aware of this, and so I spoke to my sister about it, and the whole thing around being aware and communicating telepathically, it's actually sending pictures. And I haven't played with this in a cognitive way, but I was talking to my sister about it. I'm like, you should send them pictures. And one of the things that was discussed, this is a total tangent, we're just going somewhere else, it was discussed that you send them pictures of the whole thing, the event, like, instead of just showing them, that they have to get their stuff together and to go to school, you show them a whole picture of them actually being in school, or even if you want, the entire day. And so then my sister asked me the question, well, how do I send that picture? And I'm like, well, that's good. I've never thought about it. I don't think it actually requires that. It's not difficult. It's actually easy. You just ask. You literally ask to send the picture. You don't necessarily need to be cognitive of it. And this is the thing that's crazy. We do this all the time, and we probably don't even realize that we do it. And so she was going to play with it. She's like, cool, I'm going to play with it. And so she sent me a message yesterday, and we talked a couple days ago, and she's like, oh my God, it works. Literally, she said this morning they were ready, waiting for the bus for 10 minutes. And this is like crazy because that never happens. And she said, not only that, they went to bed late the night before. They went to bed at 10 because there was some sort of concert or something like that, band concert. So not only did they go to bed late, they were up and ready and waiting for the bus to show up. And she's like, wow, like it literally blew her away. It is literally that easy to communicate. She didn't say anything to them. All she did was send them a picture of the day, and that's all that was required. how often do we make our lives difficult? Is it really that easy? Is it really that's all that's required? So all these years, and it's been a lot, that there's been this struggle every morning. It's like all it requires is to give information. Give information to what is happening that day. And it's amazing what kind of ease gets created. And it's amazing how it's kind of one of those situations where you never thought it was possible, that it could be literally that easy. Take something a few seconds. And kind of on this whole conversation around ease is this thing about asking. This thing about ask and you shall receive. It's been something that's been floating around in my universe quite a bit lately. And I'm actually doing a telecall tomorrow called What the Hell is a Question and How Do You Ask? It's interesting because what I realized is that even when you ask a question, most people don't actually ask questions, which is not unusual actually. Most questions are not actually a question. They're really a conclusion with a question mark put at the end of it. So you're not actually in the space of possibility. You're not actually in the space of receiving the information of what else is possible. And also a question, when you're really in that space of possibility, then not only is a different possibility able to show up, and also what's kind of cool about it is that this energy of knowing that it has been, it is already. This is like, and when you ask a question from that space, that whatever you're asking for, you will receive. Like, it's not a question of whether it'll show up. It's a question of that it will, that you're looking for it to show up. It's not that you're looking for it not to show up, which is mainly where most people function from. It's this place of asking a question and then looking for all the places that it can't actually actualize. You're actually looking for it not to. And so therefore it doesn't. Where it's asking a question and being willing to receive it. And there's been this conversation around that people just aren't willing to receive, which I get that conversation. And what if the conversation was more that people aren't actually asking the question in the space of actually receiving what they're asking for? Or actually asking the question and then going, no, I can't actually receive that. Oops, I forgot to turn this down. So you get beeps in here. Okay. So what if you lived in the space of possibility and you were always the question and you lived from the question and and the questions that you asked were looking for the space of that to show up. And knowing that it is showing up and looking at all the different places it possibly could show up. And so, so you're actually looking to receive it. You're actually looking for a place to receive what you're asking for, instead of asking the question and looking for all the places that you don't think it can show up. And so you're looking for what isn't going to be there. It's kind of a really basic question. Hello, Eleanor. How you doing? It's really like a basic question. Like it is really that simple. And when I look at like how difficult we make our lives by looking at all the places that we can limit ourselves, and then we create that. We create the limitation that we're looking for. We're not looking at the expansion of what else is possible, kind of thing. And so coming back to this scenario with my sister and her kids and just sending them pictures, it's really cool how easy you can make your life. And then taking that same scenario with communication on how we communicate with people, like how else can you use that? And how much do you use that and probably don't even notice? Like, you're around people, and like, how much ease can that be? Like, you're sometimes around people and you're actually aware of what they're thinking, and they might be actually asking you a question in their head and you respond out loud. I mean, I know I've done it. I'm sure you've done it at some point, whether you realized it or not. And it's kind of funny, like how to you it just may seem natural. It may seem normal. It is probably normal in your world. It is probably something that you actually be all the time. And because it's so normal in your world, you don't realize that not everyone works that way. And how much can you play with it? Like, what other information can you impart on people without actually saying anything to them? And how much fun could that be? And how could you play with that? And giving people information, and it's kids that are actually easier to play with in a lot of ways in this sense, because kids often are open to playing in this way, whereas you tend to shut off your awareness as you get older. And also the people that you do have in your life, what if you could play with it? Give information to your partner, give information to your family members, and see what that creates. It's really a place that we can go that most of us have never gone before. I think that was a name of a movie or something, or it was a line in a movie. Anyways, it's just another way of playing. And really, how can that open up your world? And how can you see the world and be in the world in a completely different way? And it's also like, one of the things you can do is you can send message to people and show them a picture of speeding up. Like, if the lines are going too slow, speed things up with everybody. There's all kinds of things you can do with it. I know that's one of my favorites, because I find that the world moves too slowly for my liking most of the time. So you can play with that too. You can put these pictures into people's heads and see what shows up, and see what else can be that you didn't think was possible. I know that actually, I was talking to someone at a class recently, and they were talking about that's what they would actually play with. They would put pictures. They worked in a grocery store, and they put pictures in. There was a lot of old people that that came to the grocery store, and they're really slow. And they put pictures in their mind of like speeding them up, and it actually worked. Like, they would speed up. So it's really cool. Like, it does actually work, and so it's something that you can play with. And it's kind of going into a world of like places that most of us don't really play with, and this may be something for some that is like a little bit too far-fetched. And if it is, I really, really encourage you to try to see what it's like and to see what happens. If you have kids, play with it with your kids. It was interesting because in the book they actually talk about this, where these parents had 3 kids, and it was just a gong show getting them out in the morning, and then at school picking them up after school, trying to locate them. It was just, no one was around, and you'd have to track down each kid. They had 3 kids, it was just a constant struggle, and the parents were exhausted. And so same thing as my sister, it was suggested that you give them a picture of the entire day. And they tried that, and they said the next day the kids were in the car before they were. And in the evening, when they went to go pick them up from school, they were all three kids were waiting for them. And it's like, what if you could actually create that much ease in your world? What, again, like, how difficult do we make our lives? How much do we, energy do we expend in a way that is like completely unnecessary when we can just use our awareness and our communication to our advantage and create so much more ease? And what else it would be possible with that? And how much would you be willing to play with it? And all the different ideas you can come up with using communication in this way. Like, what else can you play with it? And I would be really, really curious to know what other things you can come up with. Because it's really something that I don't think a lot of people play with a lot of the time, and are willing to be aware that they know that they do communicate and they have this awareness and they are telepathic. And it kind of comes back to the beginning of what I titled this. It's like waking up and having seeming like I got hit by a truck. Well, that's awareness. That's a tremendous amount of awareness. And in the past, I would always make something like that a wrongness. And it's like, it's this place of like, how aware actually are we all? Like, actually, how aware are we with everything that's going on? And how little do we acknowledge our awareness, and by that acknowledge our being as well? Yes, beautiful roses. Thank you. And so when we don't acknowledge our awareness and our being, we also don't acknowledge us. And it's really, it's a place where we constantly, what's the word? There's a word for it, and I never remember it. I'm going to say disempower, but that's not, it is that, but there's a particular word. Anyways, it'll come later. But it's really cool that how little we actually acknowledge ourselves. And sorry, a little interlude there. How much that can really change how you are. Like, when my sister played with her kids and how that changed her morning, I'm like, how awesome are you that you were able to do that? And not only that you were able to do that, you chose to do it, and you saw that it actually created something different and what you're capable of. And so I got to acknowledge my sister for the brilliance that she is. Like, and she has some major capacities that she doesn't really ever want to acknowledge. So I get to do that. And so it's really cool just how all the places that we, again, go to not acknowledge the amazing beings that we are and the level of awareness that we have, and how we can change ourselves. And really, by acknowledging others, it really creates something different in the world. And it really creates this place where, what if we acknowledged each other all the time, and the brilliance that we are, and how much would that change everything in our world and with the people around us? And so that's something that for me, I would love to see in this world, and I would love to see what else is possible with that. And I really get, like, that's kind of part of what started this weekly show was just talking about the different places that I saw that that if we simply just acknowledged ourselves, what that could change in the world for us and for consciousness and for the earth and everything, really. Like, it literally is how everything can be different. And so if you were able to acknowledge your brilliance and able to acknowledge your capacities, and this being one of them, our capacity to communicate telepathically and send pictures to other people and not have to say a single word to them, and actually realize that that does work and it actually changes stuff, what would then be possible from there? And what are all the things that is beyond that, even, like beyond everything? And that is my invitation, and that is what I would desire for this world to be. And instead of tearing each other down all the time, what if we could just acknowledge the brilliance that everyone is, and the fact that we're not the same, and that uniqueness of each person is part of the gift that you are. So thank you so much for coming and playing today in the front yard and the roses and the swinging chair and the sunshine. And I'll do this again. See you again next week, same time, maybe different place. We'll see. All right. Have a good one. Thank you. Bye.